WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. We Should Know is on the air. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. Each and every week, we bring you new information. Some maybe review information about things we've had on in the past that's very pertinent to your life on a daily basis. And one of those things is the weather and the climate. And I really know no one with any more background and knowledge than Nick Petro with the National Weather Service. Nick, your title is Warning Coordination Meteorologist. That's quite a mouthful. But the one thing that struck me with that title, when I look at the organizational chart at the Raleigh office, you are at the top of the administration there. So that tells me that your role is critically important. Plus, I don't have to look far, but remember just in the past year, when I would see the governor or I would see national disaster situations happening related to weather, you're somewhere in that mix.
Absolutely, yeah.
20 plus years.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. And first, thanks for having me on the show.
Sure.
This is great. It's great to be here again. Warning Coordination Meteorologist, the word coordination is the key. Because the National Weather Service creates a lot of products and services, and we have a lot of partners that help us in the mission of protection of life and property. So my job as one of the managers in the office is to make sure that, number one, of course, we take care of our staff, our forecasters who are doing the daily work, make sure they have all their needs. But as a warning coordination meteorologist, I coordinate all the products and services. I make sure that our users, our core partners, have the information and the data and the weather information they need to help us in our mission of protection of life and property. So we work with a lot of emergency services, emergency personnel. We work with the media. We work with, like the DOT, for example, school systems, universities, and local county school systems. Basically, just trying to keep everybody prepared. And my job as a warning coordination meteorologist is to make sure that all those users have the information they need to make those decisions.
I think one of the things when I look at Raleigh and what happens out of the Raleigh office, that's kind of the quadrant of central North Carolina and the dynamic that's occurring there. But you've also worked in various other districts and various other areas related to this job of weather analysis. Tell us a little bit about that history and your journey to where you are now.
Oh, yeah. So, I knew I wanted to be a meteorologist since I was probably younger than 10 years old, and that's a lot of my colleagues share similar stories. We knew when we were just little tots that we wanted to be meteorologists, and we were just so intrigued by the weather, followed the weather. Of course, I was probably one of the first kids in my middle school, imagine, that knew what they wanted to do when they grew up,
Wow.
that knew what they wanted to do when they graduated, that knew what they wanted to go to college for. And I stuck with it. And I had the opportunity to tour a local National Weather Service office where I was growing up. And I saw the excitement there and just the mission, the core, the mission and the dedication to that job that the folks at that National Weather Service office had and rooted in its public service. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. So of course, after, graduating high school and going to Penn State for 4 years and getting a degree in meteorology, worked in the private sector for a couple years and then found my way at the National Weather Service. That place that I originally had taken that tour when I was just a young middle schooler, and was able to get into the weather service, and 23 years later, here I am, after a long time, and that mission is still there. That passion for public service is still there, and trying to help people keep safe. The one thing is that weather can do a lot of damage. It can hurt people. It can even kill people, God forbid. But if people know how to prepare and respond to the weather, there's no reason anybody should be injured. So that's what we try to do.
And I think that piece that you mentioned comes through, and of course you're kind of a regular here with us. When I call, and I want to thank you again for coming, because usually when I call or text you, it's like, yeah, we'll work it out. We might have to switch the days around, but you show up and you're here, and it doesn't matter that this is kind of rural North Carolina, but you show up. So that tells me you've got a service heart about you.
Oh, yeah.
You look at things and how you can improve and help people. And that's critically important.
It doesn't matter if I'm doing this in an urban area with 1 million people, or doing it in a rural area with just hundreds of people. Everyone needs an opportunity to have the information and get the information and learn about how to stay safe. And I especially too, that's a big part of our mission, is trying to, reach everybody in our entire coverage area. And, I'm happy to be here.
I want to kind of back up. It's been, of course, about a year since, we try to have you here at least once a year. I'd like to do it maybe quarterly, but I don't want to impose on you. One of the things that struck me is looking at some of the things that's happened. Recently, I read an article, and I think it came out in June of this year, that there had been a new huge computer system put in for the weather service that has changed a lot of things as far as a plus side, right, because of the analytics. And the other part struck me was the speed. Talk to us about that computer system, because I'm talking something dynamic. Right. And I really, as I read it, there was a lot of words in there that I really didn't understand, because it was technical stuff about the computer itself. Right. But talk to us about what happened there and what that means to you.
Well, to try to put it in a simple sense, because we could get into the computer weeds real fast, right? Mm-hmm. But all of the data that we use to predict the weather is rooted in numbers, in equations, mm-hmm, and we call it computer models. And these aren't just 1 + 1 = 2. These are really, really involved, in-depth equations with lots of different parameters, complex, and variables, right? And the way a model works is it takes the area that you want to model, and we create this grid point of grids. There's perhaps every mile apart, or every 2 miles apart, and in depth every couple hundred feet. There's another grid point, and all these mathematical equations have to be run for all these grid points. And one equation, the solution to one, might feed into another equation. Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievably complicated. So the faster the computer that you can apply to these mathematical equations, really the quicker you get the result, and the more complicated you can simulate. The atmosphere is incredibly complicated. So the more details you can put into these simulations, ideally the better the forecast you'll get. But we are limited in that modeling. We are limited in that modeling capability by how fast the computers we have. So whenever we have these computer upgrades, that basically means that we can run more models, more complex models that do a better job simulating the atmosphere. And the goal is obviously to have better simulations, which give us more accurate forecasts, so we can be able to give people more time to prepare. And that's really the end game, is to give people as much possible time to prepare for any type of impending hazardous weather. And it's all rooted back into our mission of protection of life and property. So the end game is to protect lives and property, and one of the ways to do it is to have really fast computers to solve a bunch of mathematical equations.
I think one of the things that impressed me with that particular article was the idea that the information going in and the volume of it, once you render all of that back out, it comes back for you to be able to present to not only your staff and folks there, but the meteorologists that work, and we're talking 25, 20 plus people, right, with degree areas in that field. That allows you to take that and then render it out to radio stations, TV networks, and others, to the general population. This is a possibility. Our atmosphere is telling us that this might happen. Is that kind of
Yeah, that's exactly is the process. And, all of the data that we prepare and create is publicly available. And so, these models that I speak of, we upload them to websites and that's why we have such a great partnership with with private sector meteorologists and the whole weather enterprise, because not only do we at the National Weather Service get to make use of these new computing capabilities and run these models, but we share that data so that the weather enterprise is prepared as well, and they could serve their partners and clients, and researchers can use that data to come up with the next new and exciting ways to slice and dice the atmosphere, and researchers will take that information and have it ready for the next computer model that's the next generation version of the model. So it's a great process. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But again, it's all rooted in that goal, which is to protect lives and property.
I'm often asked, particularly if I have you on a show, and folks will ask me, well, what is the difference between a climatologist and a meteorologist? And that question comes up because the whole thing about global warming comes up.
Right.
So just kind of explain to us the difference. One seems to be tied more to historical data versus current and projected data, and I may have to call you on that and go over from our break, because we're going to come up on a break here in about 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, in its simplest form, meteorology and just traditional weather forecasting typically ends around day 7 in the future. And from day 8 on is more of a climate related phenomena. We look toward climatic norms and what's supposed to happen versus our patterns trending above or below normal. So it typically is the difference is a span of time.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to kind of get into some of those tools and prediction capabilities that you're using, and talk about predictabilities. And the other word that goes along with that is accuracy as well, right. Which is a kind of a moving target.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Nick Petro with the National Weather Service, and we're talking about issues and things that you face each and every day, whether you like it or not. We'll be back in a moment.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. J.W. Simmons, your host. We're talking with Nick Petro with the National Weather Service. And again, your title, Nick, is Warning Coordination Meteorologist. We talked about a number of things in the first segment. I want to kind of follow up a little bit with that conversation about predictabilities and how we do that, and not only the importance of what we talked about with that huge computer that's compressing all those models, and to your point, the huge complexity of something we call weather. A bigger picture would probably be Mother Nature, that we refer to it. But let's talk about that accuracy and information and predictabilities, and somehow percentages built into that. But where I'm steering here is trying to get folks to understand that a lot of what you and the folks that work with you do is process a lot of things that is fed out to media platforms, networks, TV networks, radio, and that kind of thing. But the core of it starts with what you guys do at the National Weather Service.
Oh, absolutely. When you think about radar data, you think about satellite data, these supercomputers and all the models, we are at the foundation. We at the National Weather Service are at the foundation of weather. And while we provide the nation's weather watches, warnings, and advisories, we do work very closely with our partners in the weather enterprise. So, and that includes all the local media stations and making sure they have the information that they need. For example, we have an instant messaging program where we leave that running 24/7 at our office, and the local broadcast meteorologists it's open to all of the broadcast meteorologists, and regardless of what network they're on, what channel, what station, they jump on there, and a lot of times they'll just ask us a question. What do we think? And that'll set off an alarm that a messages come in, and we can respond to them. And especially there's a lot of that happens, especially during severe weather, when there's dangerous thunderstorms moving through, and of course the local media are doing the on-air coverage. We're at the National Weather Service putting out the warnings, and the media are helping us push those warnings out to the general public. But there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of communication that goes on between us at the National Weather Service and our private sector partners. And I don't think people realize how rooted the National Weather Service is in just weather in general. We're at the forefront of making sure that everybody has the information they need. And when you turn on your favorite channel to watch your weather segment, the National Weather Service is involved in that, not necessarily directly, but indirectly. And chances are we're communicating with that person you're watching on TV, and the data that they're using, we've provided in some fashion.
I think it's interesting in that when I look at, kind of take a deep dive into this stuff, is that the functionality of the media to be able to push things forward would not exist if they didn't have the platform that you guys operate with. And that goes to radar, that goes to the term Doppler and all these kinds of things. That's not unique to one particular station or radio or TV or network. That is the core of where they're pulling their information from.
Absolutely. We have a data hub, if you will, where all of our information is stored, and anyone, even the general public, can retrieve information from that data hub. And essentially, while some TV stations have their own radars, the National Weather Service basically covers the entire nation, and we provide sort of the background fields for even TV stations that have their own radars. And again, it's our radar data that is the basis for the warnings that we issue.
When we're looking at the National Weather Service online, and I've done this, and go online and I look at that massive amount of information, and you pull up a map, you can literally go to where your house is, to your neighborhood, and it's amazing. But this is where I lose it, because I don't have the analytical capability, and I guess just not smart enough to know how to do it. But you can literally drill in and find out all kinds of information, to include heat indexes, which has been, for the month of July, has been extremely unbelievable. Is there precedents that we are seeing set there with indexes 106, 107, temperatures 3-digit, 100 plus? Always, and I know this is getting into climatology, but it seems that there's always been high temperatures, and I'm just looking at it. There's something a little bit different, bud.
Yeah, I think the historical data would suggest that these heat indices that we're seeing are, we see them like this. Or I guess I should say it's not really unprecedented. One heat indices of 100, 105. As much as 110, they have occurred in the past, and they'll continue to occur in the future. And it's largely dependent upon, in the nearer term, what weather pattern you're in, and right now we are as of us discussing this, as of right now, as we're talking, we're in a weather pattern that is about as pure summer pattern as it gets. Lots of humidity and just a very, very hot summer air mass. The weather pattern with high pressure and large ridging over the central part of the country is like this is the oven. It's producing that heat, and then the westerly flow is bringing it eastward and spilling over the mountains. And then when it comes over the mountains, it compresses and warms even more. And meanwhile, we have the sources of moisture very close by, that provide the humidity, the Atlantic Ocean, the feed off the Gulf. It all works together to give us just sometimes what feels like brutally hot temperatures. But it has happened in the past. This is not particularly unusual what we're experiencing right now.
That's a perfect lead into the next observation here is the discussion about predictabilities. When you put a predictability out, and oftentimes it'll come on my phone, or it'll go to some of the emergency networks, and of course people's connection, depending on how you're connected, it will light up. There are folks that go, oh my gracious, we got a prediction that, we might get large hail and whatever, and there may be storms, and then they'll say, well, my gracious, nothing happened. Right. So let's talk about the importance of putting that out versus maybe disappointing someone that they didn't get, something struck by lightning or hail versus 6 inches of snow to no snow. Right. Is there an equation there somewhere that says now's the time to put that out versus not putting it out? And I guess folks need to just understand there's not but so much that you can predict.
Right. Yeah. The topic of warning, like severe thunderstorm warning, is another complex one. Our team of meteorologists are looking at the radar, and they're not looking at just one layer of the storm. They're looking at 3 dimensions of it, and we're looking for various patterns, various signals in the radar data, various things like updrafts and downdrafts, and the wind inside the storm. How much mass is in the thunderstorm, mass made up of rain and ice. And there's just so many parameters we're looking at and slicing and dicing these storms that particularly, in the springtime that leads into the summertime, we can have these storms that suggest there could be hail or a microburst, a downburst, or in the worst case scenario, maybe a tornado. And our job is to warn people. Mm-hmm. And the way we do that with our software, we have, the radar data, that's overlaid on top of maps, and we just simply draw a box over where we think that storm could potentially go. Mm-hmm. If I could nail that exact location of the hail core, down to the street level, well then, there wouldn't be so many overwarned people. But we're just not there yet with that. We're just not there yet with that level of specificity. So we have to, use a fairly, large box. And what that generally means is that there's going to be people who don't get severe weather but are included in the warning. Now, that said, remember, all thunderstorms have lightning. All thunderstorms have lightning. So, if you receive a warning and you don't get that large hail or damaging winds, chances are you were in a potentially incredibly dangerous, life-threatening storm just because of the lightning, nothing more than a lightning. I think whenever people receive severe thunderstorm warnings, folks need to heed those warnings and just simply move indoors and get away from windows, or get in their car if they're outdoors somewhere where there's no structure available. And even when there's not a warning in effect for your area, if you hear thunder or you see lightning, you need to get indoors and get away from windows or get into your car, because lightning can kill. There's no place outside that's safe when lightning is in the vicinity. So, so if you could see it or if you could hear it, it's time to get inside. So, in that sense, every thunderstorm is potentially deadly.
And I think to that point, it's like, recently here, we've just, had some huge thunderstorms come through with tremendous amount of lightning. Right. So just a little question for clarification. If you see a flash of lightning, right, versus someone says a lightning strike versus a flash of lightning, is every flash of lightning considered a strike, or is a strike where it actually connects with an object or the ground? So
when lightning occurs, it's trying to complete basically an electrical circuit. And sometimes that circuit is completed within the cloud. So we just call that in-cloud lightning. And other times it reaches down to the ground, to the earth, to complete that circuit. And when you have the strike that hits the earth, we call that cloud to ground. There are far more in-cloud lightning strikes, lightning flashes, than there are cloud to ground strikes. So, but it doesn't matter which you're seeing. Because you never can tell what the next strike is going to bring, whether it's going to go to the ground or stay in the cloud. So anytime you see lightning, you need to get indoors. Or hear thunder, get indoors.
We're going to take a break. I want to come back and I want to add on some observations in that and kind of get your input on lightning, because that's a big issue for folks. And I think it's one of those things that we don't look at close enough, but it is a deadly bombs going off all around us. So we'll be back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, with Nick Petro with National Weather Service. Stay tuned.
At home or away, knowing who is at your door is priceless. Star Communications is here to help with its doorbell security camera by Skybell. Live viewing and two-way audio equips you with the ability to always see and greet anyone that shows up at your door. If this is the kind of confidence you are looking for, call Star Communications today at 1-800-706-6538 to learn more about this intelligent security that you can always depend on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. J.W. Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. And we're talking with Nick Petro with the National Weather Service, the warning coordination meteorologist. When we went to break, we were talking about lightning and particularly thunderstorms. I want to kind of circle back to that just for a moment. And you mentioned the lightning strike itself is lightning. That particular ball of fire is looking a way to connect, to complete a circuit. Right. Whatever it hits not only can be detrimental in the sense of fire, but it can be explosive. We're talking hundreds of thousands of volts of electricity here.
Oh, and temperatures that are hotter than the surface of the sun. So a lot of lightning victims have burns, and a lot of I've seen cases where shoes have melted, on or off the feet of the. A lot of times they get blown off, but if they stay on, they're melted to people's feet. I mean, just the intense energy, the electricity, and combined with the heat. I mean, it is just, it's so, it can happen so fast, and that's why, sometimes, lightning, can have very little, warning if it just starts to develop over you. But that's the very reason why we tell people don't delay when lightning, when you see lightning or hear thunder. That means you're within range of being struck. There used to be some old methods like, counting like how many seconds are between flash and strike, or, count 30 seconds if you see the lightning and it's more than 30 seconds. All that stuff, throw all those old methods away, because, a lot of those techniques have been proven to be outdated and particularly not very effective. So we've simplified it. We've simplified it. When thunder roars, go indoors. That's one of our sayings. Yeah. So when thunder roars, go indoors. Basically, if you could hear the thunder, you're within range of being struck. If you could see the lightning. And when I say see the lightning, I don't mean, seeing the lightning way off in the distance. Sometimes when the storms move away, it's way over towards the horizon and it looks beautiful in the sky. You can kind of see the lightning in the cloud. And I'm talking about if you can see those actual, leaders, those flashes, you are within range of being struck. And you just, it's something you don't want to waste time seeking shelter. And, the thing that really, really just like, I see it and it frustrates me when I see people during a storm who might be outside at a ball game. Just yesterday, I saw this as I was driving by a ball field. There was a storm going on, lightning flashing, making contact with the ground all around. And there's a group of kids, ball players, huddled under a pop-up tent. A pop-up tent. That pop-up tent's metal. It's got a metal frame, and they're okay. Granted, the pop-up tent is keeping them dry, but my gosh, they're putting themselves at grave danger of being struck by lightning. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of cars nearby. The best thing to do is just simply get in your car. You had to get to that ball field somehow, right? So, and if you don't have a car there, ask one of your friends, hey, can I sit in your car with you? But, and I think a lot of a lot of coaches and maybe even, maybe even parents need to be educated on this too. Heck, maybe even the umpires need to be educated on this, that, when you hear the thunder, see the lightning, tell people just to get in their car, because that's a safe place.
And don't hesitate.
And don't hesitate. Don't wait. Don't wait till it's a little closer, because by the time it's closer, it might be too late.
I think that particular one piece, if we could just get that out today in this whole message, that would be critical, because that happens all the time. I'm like you. I've seen it over and over again, and over life history. Right. Thank God, and I've been blessed not to have been struck, because people just take that for granted. But it's literally a volley of all kinds of potential of explosions hitting the ground at one time.
Absolutely, and it's totally unpredictable. I mean, I've seen. Oftentimes, you think, well, it's going to hit that tall tree. Yeah. And not necessarily. It doesn't always strike the tallest object. It strikes the object with the best grounding potential. It strikes the object that provides the best path to complete the circuit to the earth. Just like electricity. It's just the way electricity flows. Electricians would probably understand lightning really well, because it works the same way, right? Yeah. You need the positive and you need the negative, and you need the negative to provide that ground. Well, lightning needs a ground, and the earth is that ground. So, if you have a tall tree next to a short tree, and that tall tree is not really deeply rooted, and a short tree that might have its rooted wrapped around some metal water pipes under the ground, guess where that lightning's going to strike? It's going to strike the shorter tree, because it has a better ground. Because
that sense of where that energy is going to that ground.
That ground, yeah. So don't assume that the lightning is going to strike something taller and is going to provide safety. It's looking for the best ground.
I'm kind of feeling that amazing kind of thing about the reason you got into this business. It's stuff that is not totally predictable, but you can get it to a certain point. So 20 years, if we're still talking 20 years from now, I wish that would be something that maybe the science has narrowed this understanding to a point that you could actually get down to a specific predictability. Sure. With new computer technology and other things. It's amazing where you might be.
Yeah, I mean, and there are some really good tools out there. A lot of, on the topic of lightning, a lot of, athletic departmts are using these lightning detectors that can detect lightning within, a certain range of the ball field or the playing field. But I always worry about the lightning that forms directly overhead. For one of those lightning detectors to detect lightning, approaching, that lightning already has to exist.
That's right.
Well, what if the lightning doesn't exist and it forms right over you? That lightning detector is not going to give you any warning.
Exactly.
So you have to really just keep your eye on the sky. It really is simple. It's so simple. Just look at the sky. If it looks threatening and you start to see storms brewing, think about where you're going to go to seek shelter. And then the moment you hear that first sound of thunder or that first flash of lightning, that's the time you want to react and get indoors.
Take it serious.
Yep.
Take it serious. Yep. I want to kind of explore, I guess, as something that's critical here as well, not only here but all over the state. We've seen hurricanes go from one place to the other. One of the things with what you do when we talk about weather, I think folks get fixated on one particular component or part. But literally, you look at everything from skin burns to folks that get caught in an undercurrent, to the climate and how it impacts us personally, to how it impacts our ability to live as communities. This is both social, personal, individual, and the dynamic grows. So let's talk about what we're looking at now as hurricanes that we may be facing in the next few weeks, as we're literally getting into that time that we start seeing a lot of hurricanes coming off of what is often referred to in the media as coming off the coast of Africa.
Right.
These storms. Just start anywhere with that, because this is a big piece and I want to try to allow as much time as we can to get into.
Sure.
That.
Well, hurricanes can start pretty much anywhere in the Atlantic basin, maybe the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, or out in the middle of the Atlantic. Sometimes they form right off the coast of the Carolinas. Oftentimes, though, the ones that provide the kind of the biggest fear are the ones that generate off the west coast of Africa and track across the Atlantic. We call that the Cape Verde season, and usually that doesn't get going until late August and lasts through September, maybe into early October. It takes a little longer for the water in the eastern Atlantic to warm up. See, the water temperature has to reach a certain temperature, roughly about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, in order to support tropical storm and hurricane development. This year, we are expecting Another busy season. Last year we had 21 named storms, 7 of which became hurricanes, 4 of which were major hurricanes. Now, a lot of those stayed off the coast, did recurvatures out to sea. We had a lot of activity in the Gulf of Mexico. Remember, it seemed like Louisiana kept getting hit right at one right after another last year. Believe it or not, this year, NOAA, our parent agency, the National Weather Service, our climate experts at the Climate Prediction Center, believes that this year will be very similar in numbers to last year. Another very busy, above normal season. And the reason is just real simple. The pattern that we had last year that supported the busy season is the same pattern we have right now. So the atmospheric pattern, the global pattern, the water temperatures, say in the Atlantic, the water temperatures in the Pacific, the numbers of storms moving across West Africa and the monsoon season there, everything's lining up to be another busy season. So the key thing though is, it's difficult to tell, even with a busy season, whether or not those storms are going to make landfall or just stay out to sea. But the one thing I can tell you is it only takes one storm to really be a memorable season. And another thing that I keep in the back of my head, and I always tell everybody, is that every year here in North Carolina, we could expect to see something, whether it's direct or indirect. Mainly because if a storm makes landfall, for example, in the Gulf Coast, a lot of times, most of the time, those storms, the remnants, move north and then eventually northeast and cross the Carolinas, dumping leftover rain. And that gives us a flooding threat, even from storms that make landfall in the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of Mexico. The other option, of course, is a direct hit, something coming at us directly from the east. Think of storms like, Isabel, like way back in the 80s, late 80s, Hugo. Those storms that really come, Fran, for example, Floyd, that come in from the east or from the south, and they directly slam into the Carolina coast. That's one typical track. The third one is the offshore track, where it gets close enough to North Carolina, doesn't make landfall, recurves east of Hatteras, but still spreads its rain back to the west, and results in really dangerous conditions at the coast. Basically, one of those 3 scenarios almost happens every year for us here in the Carolinas.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. And of course, when we come back, it's the last segment. So I want to continue to talk about hurricanes and some of the details that we need to look at and some of the obvious kinds of observations that we make and maybe take for granted. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Nick Petro with the National Weather Service. We want to thank you for being with us. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us today. We're coming up on our last segment of the show we call We Should Know. I'm J.W. Simmons, your host. Please continue to communicate with us and send us your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. We do so much appreciate your comments. Also, I appreciate your comments when I see a lot of folks just out and about and someone will stop and mention a show we've had or someone we've talked to or ask, can we get a certain show back, or those kinds of things, or you may have an idea about a show. Continue to let us know about that. Also, you can drop us a postcard or mail to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. I want to thank all those folks at the radio station as well that mention us each and every week and kind of let you know what we've got going on. Robert Stroud with the Big Issues Radio Network on Saturdays is a big show at the radio station, along with Wayne Weeks and Tommy and Nicole and others that do such a great job with WCLN. So thank you for being with us. And we're talking today about weather. And Nick Petro, National Warning meteorologist, coordination meteorologist. One of the things that we're talking about is hurricanes, and we know, as we just went off air and you pointed out, these are things that are inevitably a reality in our environment.
Right.
We know that at some point in time that's going to be an impact for us. It's almost like expect in some way you're going to be impacted, either by winds. For us in the eastern part of the state, we see a huge amount of flooding. Folks oftentimes wait too late if they feel like they need flood insurance.
Right.
Tell us how we need to prepare, and when do we start preparing, or should we always be prepared?
Well, number one, we should always be prepared. It's never the wrong time to prepare. Every time is a good time to prepare for all hazards. Weather hazards, we are moving towards the peak of the season. The peak of the hurricane season is generally from mid-August through mid-October. September, is really the core of the peak in terms of the numbers of storms out there. But here we are moving towards that time frame, and there's still time to prepare. And preparation is so important, especially for folks who live, particularly in this part of the world, this part of the country, this part of the state, where we are going to see some type of either direct or indirect tropical storm or hurricane impacts. I can almost guarantee it every year, whether it's something that makes landfall in the Gulf and dumps a lot of rain on us a couple days later, or whether it's a direct impact that slams right into us and does devastation, or whether it's something that's recurving just to our east and throws a bunch of rain back at us. We need to be prepared for that one event, or maybe multiple events, that will affect us every single year. So what does that mean? That means, number one, determine your risk. If you find out, if you're new to the area, or if you've been around forever, you might think back to previous storms. Or if you're new to the area, ask your neighbors, hey, what has happened here before? With the last hurricane, what kind of impacts have we had? What's typical for this area? If you live in a flood-prone area, then that's great information to know to be able to further seek out maybe some flood insurance, or figure out where you would go if floodwaters the risk of floodwaters increase. Then certainly you want to do an insurance checkup. You want to make sure you have adequate insurance. Make sure that you have the necessary flood insurance. If you don't have flood insurance and you are not in a flood-prone area, consider getting it anyway. Because how many times have we seen people say, "I never thought it could flood here"? Every storm I hear somebody say, "I never thought it could flood here." I hear that all the time. And if you're not in a flood zone, flood insurance is reasonably priced for folks not in a traditional floodplain or flood prone area. So definitely consider that. Strengthen your home. What I mean by that is, if you've got a lot of, say, weak or dead trees on your property that could be blown over by a tropical storm or hurricane's high winds, think about getting rid of those trees, removing them, taking them out, cutting them down, getting rid of anything that could go vegetation or trees that could go flying and impact your home. Be ready. Have a plan for if you have outdoor loose objects, for where you're going to put those objects and where you're going to secure them in the days leading up to, say, a landfalling hurricane. Check on your neighbor. Make sure that after you're done doing your preparation work, that your neighbors and your family, your friends, folks in your sphere of influence are doing the same. If you do live in a flood-prone area that is subject to routine or frequent flooding, have an evacuation route established. Figure out how you're going to leave that flood area and where you're going to stay once you've left that flood zone area. And then finally put all this in a plan. Write it down. You could go to ready.gov or ready.nc.gov or NC It's readync.gov or ready.gov, and you can download templates that you can use to put all of this information.
Just fill in the blank.
Fill in the blanks, yeah. And then finally, I know we talk about this every time. People hear about this over and over again, but I can't emphasize this enough: to have a storm kit. And the things you would need if you are stuck at home for 3, maybe 4 days. So, water, enough water for folks, non-perishable foods, flashlights, batteries, maybe a battery-powered radio, medicines, first aid kit, enough supplies for your pets. You want to be able to sustain for at least 72 hours without being able to get out and get supplies. So, those are the basic things you could do now to prepare for the the peak of the hurricane season that is on its way.
One of the things that I'm often asked, especially when I have you on, folks will say, well, I've been planning to get one of those generators that runs off of LP gas or something and have it all hooked up to my home. Is that something, and of course we're talking a major investment of $10,000, $15,000.
Sure.
Is that something that folks should realistically consider? Have you seen where that is a positive thing in the past? I mean, I guess obviously it's not going to run but just a few days. Is that something that's realistic, or do you look at it kind of your own health situation?
Well, everybody has their own requirements and can make their decision about how to what extent they want to prepare. But I will tell you that if you're thinking about a whole home generator, don't try to do something like that yourself. Make sure you hire a licensed electrician that can do all that wiring properly. And number 2, if you have a portable generator, one that you're going to just pull out of the garage and fill up with gas and run a refrigerator or something, make sure you know how to use it properly. Make sure it's well vented. When you do need to use it, make sure it's at least 15 feet away from your home. Never run a generator in the garage because of the obvious risk is carbon monoxide poisoning. And, it seems like we hear about this pretty frequently after hurricanes where people, they made it through the storm. They had minimal damage, but their power was out. They fired up their portable generator, but unfortunately they pass away because they succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. They didn't have their generator vented properly, or it was maybe being run in the garage, or maybe too close to their home, where some of the carbon monoxide
gets recirculated
came back in. So you want to, make sure you use those devices properly, or have them installed properly by a licensed electrician.
I think that when I think about hurricanes and I reflect back, I hear people talk about Hurricane Hazel in 1955 that just decimated the coast of North Carolina. We're subject to that same volley of storms every year, and it's I guess you could say it's kind of like a crapshoot. We don't know, how that dice is going to fall out, what's going to happen. But to your point, the reality is something is going to happen.
Oh, something's going to happen, whether it's very minor, like I said, something, remnant coming at us from the Gulf Coast. Every year, something is going to happen. And I will point out that we are way overdue for another Category 3 or higher storm. The last Category 3 or higher storm that hit us was Fran in '96. Wow. So that was, more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're way overdue for a Category 3, a big storm. Now, let me be clear that the categories of storms, Category 1 through 5, that just addresses wind. That doesn't address the overall severity of the storm. So when you're listening to the local media weather report, or you're checking out products on weather.gov from us at the National Weather Service, and you see us talking about the storm category, keep in mind that's just related to wind. What we need to think about here in Sampson County and surrounding areas, when we hear the word tropical storm or hurricane, our number one hazard is water. We need to think water. We need to think flooding. Every tropical storm and hurricane, we need to think water. Now, I'm not saying that don't worry about the wind and all the other impacts, but the biggest, most dangerous hazard is the flooding threat. So again, I can't emphasize enough that when tropical storms and hurricanes impact us, folks just need to remember to move away from flood-prone areas. If your property flooded last time, it's probably going to flood again with the next tropical storm or hurricane, and just be ready to have that plan to leave if you need to, and never drive through areas where water covers the roadway. Think water.
One quick closing thing I want to touch on. I've heard folks say you need to get a NOAA radio and have that available at all times. Because with no electricity, you got to have something to communicate with.
Absolutely. And the No Weather Radio will allow you to listen and receive weather broadcasts from us at the National Weather Service. If the power goes out, they're all battery powered. Definitely a great investment for the hurricane season.
Nick, I want to thank you again for being with us today and taking time to come down to the studio and have a conversation with us. You've been very forthcoming every year, and it's always a blessing to have you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you again next week right here on We Should Know, and we encourage you to join us as we talk about things that is affecting your life. And as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.